5 groups of foreigners who can work freely in the Czech Republic. Number 1, EU citizens. Number 2, family members of EU citizens who are not EU citizens themselves. Number 3, permanent residence holders. Number 4, students of accredited programs. And number 5, dependents under the long-term residence permit. Employing EU citizens is easy. Basically, the only extra thing that employers need to do when they're employing EU citizens is to report start, changes, and termination of the employment of the EU citizens to the Labour Office within some time limits. But besides that, everything works the same way as for Czech citizens, employing Czech citizens. Employing family members of EU citizens is a bit more tricky. Because basically the only tricky part there is that you need to figure out if the person is a family member of an EU citizen or not. How you do that as an employer usually is that you check their documents, and if they have the temporary residence permit as family members of EU citizens, then you're completely fine. Or often people apply for jobs when they just applied for the temporary residency and they still don't have it. But that's fine as well, as long as you get a confirmation that the application was submitted, and as long as the person has a bridging visa in their passport, employing them works the same way as employing EU citizens. So only the report to the Labour Office is needed when the employment starts, when there are some changes, and when the employment terminates. Employing permanent residence holders is easy. Basically, that's the same as for EU citizens. So employer only needs to report the start of employment, any changes in the employment, and the end of employment to the Labour Office within some time limits. Those time limits are 10 days for end of employment, latest on the same date when the employment starts. So the start of employment must be reported latest on the same date when it starts, and changes usually need to be reported within 10 days. So that's all the same for EU citizens and their family members and permanent residence holders. Employing students is kind of tricky because there are 2 different types of students. One is proper students who study some accredited programs of Czech universities. Then those usually fall under the proper student status, and then you can employ them in the same way as EU citizens, family members of EU citizens, or permanent residence holders. But some students study under the so-called other purpose of stay, which means that they are not usually proper students, and then you cannot employ them. But once they fill the requirements for students, then you can employ them the same way as EU citizens and their family members and permanent residence holders. Employing dependents is the trickiest one because there are multiple rules that need to be met, and there are some conditions. But in general, if the dependent shows you a residence permit, it must be a residence permit. The biometric card with their biometric details and everything. It cannot be just a visa. But if they show you the residence permit and it has the code of the purpose of stay is low, it's like 17 or 15 or numbers like that, then you cannot employ them because that's just a family type of residence permit, and you can only employ family reunification type of residence permits. And those are usually marked with high numbers like 94, 95, 96, numbers like that. So that's kind of an easy way to determine if you can or cannot employ dependents. Hopefully this was helpful, and I'll be coming with more information soon.